there's more children over there in the park now than there ever was before there was a dog park. So I wouldn't I wouldn't say that children can't play in the park now. As far as noise, I think if anybody goes out there on any given day, the noise level is not what people are talking about. I think a couple baseball teams going out there and practicing, there's more noise from just kids practicing baseball than there is from the dogs. So I think the noise level is not an issue. And as far as traffic, people are going through those neighborhoods to get to the Springville on-ramp and also coming off the freeway. That's where the traffic issue is. It's not from the people using the park. So these are the only comments that I have to make here.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anybody else on this issue? Going once, going twice? Okay. Nobody else? All right. This is public comments. I have a few more cards, but they're not about this issue here. So is Ken Moddard? Is it Moddard? Oh, there you go. Again.
Ignore the shirt. Different topic. I have been part of Camarillo Skyway Playhouse in that acting community for a couple of years now. And one of the things when I moved down from the Bay Area, they have what they call Lamplighter Tours. And what the Lamplighter Tours were they found the oldest cemetery in my neighborhood, and they did 3 to 5 minute vignettes. The purpose was to refurbish the cemetery. It had fallen into disarray. Weeds, cracked headstones, broken fences, that kind of stuff. I haven't noticed anything like that here, but the theater group wanted to put on what they call ghost tours, going to some of the historic venues of Camarillo, and the actors are free, we don't get paid, and just hosting little events, putting on a 5-minute vignette of Mr. Camarillo, I guess, who was the founder of the city, and some of the historical figures who are no longer present to be part of that. And I've been asked to know if we need to pull permits for that, what all that process is about. And again, I haven't unpacked my razor. I don't know where anything is in the house yet, so I apologize for my appearance. My notes on this topic are also buried in a box somewhere. I may come back next week with better notes and more detail, but I'm willing to answer any questions that you may have regarding what they're calling ghost tours and what I call Lamplighter Tours.
Yeah, I might make a suggestion. You talk to Mr. Dave Norman about that. He can
come and see
get
me
together.
at the
Perfect.
Community Development Department.
Perfect.
You also might want to talk with the Arts Center, because in talking to them, they want to do plays inside the old gymnasium that they've got the Arts Center in.
Okay.
In Old Town.
Okay.
And there might be some other venues down there that you could look at and visit.
The reason I approached Skyway Playhouse first is they have a vast majority of resources from all their plays. They have costuming that they'll let us use if there are period pieces needed. They have props that they've said we could use if they're needed as well. Just a brief oversight on what they did in Santa Rosa, where they did it. It was $10 a head, and they ran it on, of course, around Halloween because it's graveyard tours, and they ran from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock every 20 minutes, so that I'm not stepping on his toes when he's doing his little skit, and he's not stepping on her toes when she's doing her little skit. And they ran for the month of October, $10 a head. Once the lighting rental, because they got to rent lights, and all of the overhead was done, it was a 60-40 split. 60 went to the city of Santa Rosa to refurbish, 40 went to the acting community who helped put that on. And I don't know if that was just the numbers that they had. Anything is negotiable, anything is worked out, but they asked me to present that to you, and I have hopefully done a somewhat decent job of that with no notes.
Okay.
What is your name again? I'm sorry.
My name is Ken Moddard, Mottard. I've been a Camarillo resident since, okay, get this right, 2008.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay. Let's see. Next. Oh, Matt Lorimer. Got Matt Lorimer on that.
Yes.
Twice in a night, huh? We got an email from Jeffrey, the city clerk, requesting bylaws for the city manager. We sent back, you guys have a copy there. We requested why they needed those bylaws. And the city of Thousand Oaks, when they were dealing with mobile home park issues, they didn't request that. Kevin Kildee requested last time, which we provided you guys, a copy that we were registered HOA. The idea that we have 94% of the people, there is an issue with the park that needs to be addressed. The rents are out of control. As you can see, they went from $735 to $1,029. Things in the park have not been maintained. And I think it's important because the fact is, your rent review board, which you said that worked, which didn't work, gave them $7.35 basically to pave the roads. That wasn't done until we started coming here, and all of a sudden they were running around trying to get it done. Mr. Morgan, a year ago, was told, and I remind him that wall is falling down. You asked me last time, which was a month ago, that wall is still falling down. I see no progress. The stumps are still there. I can go on and on and on. You know, any negotiation you have with anybody, basically, you have to have a willing partner. We're not going to give up our First Amendment rights to speak in a contract. That's a no-go. That's a non-starter. The idea that you're going to put in a contract that we're not going to be able to go to any public agency when you don't keep your promises, like paving the park. You're supposed to do it in 12 months in 2010 is unacceptable. So we are very concerned about turning over any bylaws. I don't think that has nothing to do with negotiations. The city of Thousand Oaks didn't request them. We even posed that question to your city clerk, which is obviously by Bruce Fing, and the answer was no. Regarding the dog park again, I have to respond to Charlotte Craven. You know something, when you make a comment that if you could seize it, control of it, that was a comment that you can't do it, but if you could, you'd make the decision. Those were your words. You know, Mr. Morgan just said, hey, if you got a problem, talk to the Pleasant Valley Park District. You know something? You're the city. You said that you've had problems for a year. Direct your city manager to talk to the park district and get things resolved. Don't just pass the buck. Jan McDonald said, for a year you've had problems. Where's the leadership again? If you want to solve problems, you don't tell people to sue other organizations. Again, if there's issues that need to be resolved, sit down with people and talk to them. They seem like a capable bunch of people. They seem willing to work with you and talk with you. They seem like nice people. I've been there. That's the solution you guys should do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to say something,
Next
Your
is-
Honor.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Larmer, we had an agenda item. We listened to your complaints. We heard from the members, residents at your park, and we took it very, very seriously, and I don't want anyone to think that we didn't. We gave the task to our city manager to work with the owners, to work with the residents, and you've got to give him time to do that. And so I don't want anyone out there to think we aren't listening and we aren't active in trying to solve a problem, but you've got to let us do it. And you had not, and misrepresenting things before us, no, wait a minute, my turn. So give us a chance to solve this problem. We want to solve it, we want to work with you, but you got to help us and let us do that. And
We
it's
are
Mr.
working with
Fang-
you.
And it's Mr. Fang's task now, so let's give him a chance.
We are working with, like I
Good.
said, I'm just saying for the bylaws, the idea that we're going to turn them over.
Well,
not
actually,
knowing-
the bylaws should have
Public
been, they
documents.
are a public document and should have been submitted when you became
Well,
a
the state
corporation
doesn't-
in the state of
The
California.
state doesn't require them.
And the Internal
Ms.
Revenue
McDonald.
Service does.
I'm just
So-
saying to you, I have no problem sharing with you to look at, but the board doesn't want to turn them over because we're concerns of IPG. We have no problem working with the city.
We want to work together, but you got to give us time to do that. And-
Well, we have. I'm not saying you're not working. I didn't say you weren't. You asked for bylaws, and we are trying to work with you on that. That's all I was trying to say. I didn't say you weren't working with us, Jan.
Okay.
I want to
that's
make that clear.
All right,
That's
thanks a
important.
lot. Okay, let's go.
Question
We've got,
two.
okay, yeah. This is
I'd
great.
like to ask the city manager, where are we in the process of the next step on that? Not on the dog park, on the mobile home park issue.
I think we've made some pretty good progress. I've had one lengthy conversation with the IPG, Amber Monte, who was here the other day, or the other meeting. We've developed a 7-page list. It's a very similar format in which we addressed this issues several years ago. And the list includes the May 28th, the last meeting, where 2 items came up. On the 7-page list, there's 7 major categories. There's probably a dozen or so items under each category. There's a lot of issues. One item is under the city's purview, which is the rent review petition process. We're looking at that. The rest of the items, it's in writing, and it will be followed up in writing on the updates. IPG has committed to fixing every single problem 100% to the satisfaction of the residents. The one remaining item that that Amber has mentioned, she's sent out emails to the residents on the long-term contract. The long-term contract is a legal document. It's a package of stipulations in the long-term lease. And we've focused on the 4% floor. I'm being very specific. I also want to demonstrate that we are taking this seriously and we're making progress. The one item that seems to keep coming up, which the council has been concerned with as well, is a 4% floor. When you consider that to the cost of living, it doesn't make sense. When you consider that over a cost of living average over the last 10 years, it doesn't make sense. That is one item of several very important items in the lease that needs to have conversation, and the parties need to be to get together, including the city, to somewhat, I guess, oversee the process. But it's essentially an item that's between the residents and IPG. I have offered.
They offered us, they told us this long-term lease and it was going to help people. What she didn't mention is that in order to sign it, you have to agree to sell your home whenever you want to sell it. I mean, you don't have to sell it if you don't want to, but if you put it up for sale, you have to give them the first right to buy it at the purchase price or the offered price, whichever is lower. I mean, that's not a bargain.
If I may, I believe that was a clause in the assistance program, not the long-term.
Okay, in the assistance.
But nonetheless, that is an onerous item, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Professional
that's
opinion.
something she bragged about when
That
she
is
was here.
something that I did talk about with her. She went on vacation this week. Matt, you might not have received this information. When I brought that to her attention, she said, there's a lot of documents. They've got 70-something parks. There's all kinds of different forms and different iterations. She said, I did not know that was in there, and it consider it gone. That is not the right thing to do. It should not be in there. It's gone. The one item that she said she needs some dialogue and somewhat cooperation with the residents is the long-term lease, and to look at it on a package deal. She has assured me, or said to me anyhow, that she thinks the residents have ample resources, possibly legal help or folks that understand leases. She has her folks, and I said, would you be adverse if the city stepped in with our attorney and read the lease and came up with some ideas and started the ball rolling if there's an impasse? Because there's no dialogue at this point, my understanding. And it's a very, very big item because it can be beneficial for everyone.
Charlotte's right 100% that they have not dropped that on the rental assistance program. You're right on that 100%, Charlotte, because Kathleen Squires was going to sign up for that, and they told her that she has to sign that document. So it hasn't been dropped. And she can come in and talk about that. But Charlotte's 100% right on that.
She has said that it's consider it gone. I don't know. I haven't
I'll
talked to
believe
her.
it when I see this document without it there.
Okay, hang on
You
here.
tricked me, and I don't believe you anymore.
Your Honor,
Good, I'm glad you didn't say that about me. That helps.
Mr. Little has, hang on, everybody, please, hang on. Mr. Little has a question.
it's 9:45, we haven't got to our agenda, and we're negotiating in public. That doesn't make any sense to me, so I would suggest that we let the city manager meet with Mr. Larmer and Ms. Bray and the owners of the park. There are some, I agree with the language, there's some odorous language in those things. Nobody's going to get a deal out of them unless it's changed. So, but let's get it done, not at this table.
Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you, Jan, for your help.
Terry Bray, Terry, thank you, Matt. Terry, you want to, please? Okay, Terry.
Well, that little brief conversation just got my mind just going in all sorts of directions. I'll try and
Spend that
stay on
night,
track.
kind of night.
Terry Bray, President of the Golden State Mobile Homeowners League, Chapter 616, Lamplighter Mobile Home Park. A couple of things. Before I forget, I just want to be clear, especially with Bruce. We met with Amber Monte, both boards of the HOA and GSMOL, for an hour and a half in the clubhouse. We made it very clear on exactly why the lease doesn't work and what we want in it. And she talks to us now as if we never had that conversation, and it is on tape. It was taped by one of the homeowner association board members. So there has been attempts in dialogue.
All the same.
In regards to a few things, I did receive your email, Mr. Fang, in regards to the complaint list, I guess is what we're going to call it. And it actually prints out to be 3 pages, not 7, but there's 9 different sections. One of the things in here that is incorrect, it says dead tree stumps removed. They haven't been removed. And so I'm very glad to hear that there's a commitment by IPG. I personally have not received an email from Amber Monte that you're referring to in regards to whatever's been negotiated, whatever you have discussed with her. I have received nothing on that. She has my email. I did provide all of you a copy of the conversations that I've had with her, proving that we do have a dialogue. In regards to the rent review board process, I had talked to previous managers asking about the anniversary dates of the spaces, and they wouldn't give that to us. So we could follow the petition process that's on the books with the rent review board. So I went to Amber Monte, who is the president. The only person above her is the owner, Brian Fitterer. I provided you the email that she denies that information, saying it's an invasion of privacy. I reiterated that I was not asking for people's names in those spaces, their rent amount, their rent increase, just the anniversary month. And again, she reiterated that she's not going to supply that information. So therefore, again, it verifies we can't use the current process that's on the books with the rent review board if we want to contest a rent raise. I also had one of my board members, Diane Huffin, who diligently contacted the apartments that are on the list that Mr. Fitterer submitted. Every single apartment complex offers only a lease, not month to month. One apartment complex does not offer month to month. Everybody's anniversary date is different. Nobody knows when they're going to have their anniversary. You see on this copy that I gave you, unit numbers of some of these complexes. One's 564 units.
You could wrap it up, Terry. I'd appreciate it. I'm
Yes.
sorry. It's
200 plus units, 300 plus units. So the reality is the process of your rent review board, which represents apartments as well as mobile homes, your system is not representing the needs of thousands of people. That's how serious it is that it needs to be renovated. If we're not going to go forward with a rent stabilization ordinance, then the rent review board process needs to be modified greatly because apartment dwellers can't use it at all.
All right. I appreciate your comments, Terry.
Okay. Is there any questions of any sort?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any more public? Because all the public pretty much left, huh?
They all left, most of them left.
We need a break.
All right. I'm going to take we're going to call a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
And it's a public hearing, ordinance amendment, the window signage. I understand the recommendation is just to open the public hearing and request that it be continued to the June 25th. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
That's correct. Okay, so with that, I'm going to open the public hearing for the ordinance amendment for the window signage, and it will be continued to the June 25th, 2014 meeting.
And you might want to ask if there's anybody in the public that would like to speak to it.
Anybody? Any
Don't you
public
dare,
want to
John.
talk about this? Okay. All right, so we will continue this, the June 25th meeting. Okay, so the next public hearing is a resolution ordering a levy and collection of assessment of fiscal year 14-15 for Camarillo Landscape Maintenance District Zones 1 through 10. Is there a staff report on this?
Yes, Your Honor, and I'll keep it brief because this is a routine item that we do annually. We do have a landscape maintenance district that has 9 zones. They're labeled 2 through 10, and they are summarized as far as the assessments we're recommending to be levied. They're summarized in a table in your staff report. We do each year have to go through this process to get your approval through a resolution to have the assessments collected for the next year. The assessments for most of the zones are recommended to stay the same. There's 2 zones where they would go up slightly. There is a annual adjustment defined for those zones of 3%, and we do recommend that that be increased, again, minor increase. And with that, we would recommend that you approve the resolution calling for the levy and assessment for another year to collect the funds to be able to provide landscape maintenance in these zones.
Okay, are there any questions of this? Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing. I'll ask anybody that wants to come down and discuss this to come down at this point. We don't see anybody, so we'll close the public hearing. What's the will of the council?
Move to adopt resolution ordering the levy and collection of assessments for the Camarillo Landscape Maintenance District Zone 1 through 10, as shown in the engineer's report.
Second.
Motion a second and further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. All right, that passes unanimously. Okay, so that gets us back to city manager item, I believe it's C on the consent calendar. I think Mrs. McDonald had a question on that one. I believe it was C, the resolution establishing an employee retirement health savings program. Did you have a question on that? I believe it was you, Mrs. McDonald.
It was me that pulled it out. You know, we talked about this on several occasions, and I think once I saw it, one in the consent calendar, where I think it probably should have been a agenda item, but I think once I saw the everything in writing and laid out there, I just have some concerns about it, and I want to make sure I understand it, so I'm going to ask a few questions. Just to be sure I understand, if this is all employee contributions, so the city is not making any contributions to the plan. Is that correct?
That is correct, 100% employee paid, and I'll just add that there's a little 1.45% in payroll tax that the city saves for every dollar that the city's paying.
Because it's pre-tax.
Right, that's correct. So there's a little savings for the city.
And then the cost to administer the plan is borne by?
We will administer the payroll setup and working with the employees in terms of their actual deductions, and when the majority of the plans are when they take effect when they separate, so we would work with payroll internally. But the actual administration of the plan, the investments and the actual IRS compliance is done with an outside ICMARC.
So even when they're paying the claims, that's all that cost is borne by the employees
Yes.
out of their contributions?
Administrative fee, isn't it?
Yes, there's administrative fees for the actual program.
$20 covers all that?
Yes. There's a number of fees there's some that are fixed for the administration and some that roll with the amount and the type of investment that they make.
And then, so it's employee contribution, so they're 100% vested when they make their contribution. It's their money.
Yes.
But they can't take the money out
They can take it out on separation,
on separation, but only for
qualified medical expenses.
qualified medical expenses. If they were to pass away and they're not married, they lose, the funds are lost.
Yes.
And they go into the plan and get distributed to everyone else, not to cover costs, but just distributed?
They would go back into the plan, and they would be distributed to the living people in their group.
Only within their group, not within the whole plan?
It's within the group or the
Oh, let me turn on.
entire city plan? Okay, so it'd go back to the entire city plan.
And is that an IRS requirement or just a requirement of this particular plan?
I believe it's an IRS requirement.
It is an IRS requirement. There was a couple choices we could have made. One is to redistribute the funds based on account balance. One was on a pro rata share basis, and the other was the city could have taken it back. We chose to provide it to the plan participants based on their plan balance.
So the larger the balance, the greater your share.
Yes.
And this is a mandatory plan, so if you fall within one of these categories and you don't want to participate, you don't have a choice.
That would be true if somebody a new employee coming to the city, that they would be mandated whether they wanted to participate or not. It would go with, if they fell within a group. The current groups that you have before you to consider this evening have unanimous votes within those groups. So
And that's why we see all these odd groups.
IRS compliant odd groups, yes.
And I guess my concern is, are those people coming in, we're mandating something in the future? Are there any other plans out there that have more flexibility, that employees have an option to join and an option to opt in and out of, or make choices?
To comply with the IRS rules, this is as flexible as we can get. This has quite a bit of flexibility.
I'm not seeing much flexibility other than your choices, perhaps of investments. Who chooses the choices to have your funds invested in?
The employees do.
Within a certain, much like a 401k plan?
Exactly.
where you
There's
have-
more than you would need.
And so in order to change this, we have all these groups. We have 23 different groups. I think that's what looks so cumbersome to me. When we were talking about it, I didn't expect to see this many groups when we were done. So you've obviously carved people out who didn't want to participate.
Well, we didn't intentionally do that because the IRS regulations don't allow you to customize that much. We have to go through logical workforces or workforce groups, and it's predominantly age and years of service, and whether the contribution is ongoing, basically salary, or if it occurs with separation or at the end of a defined period. But we have to stay in a pattern. We can't change from year to year to year to be compliant with the IRS regulations. The 23 groups that you have represent, I think, roughly 80% of our employees, and the majority, out of the 23, there's 3 that substantively have ongoing contributions. The majority, the remaining, make contributions on separation, and it's typically leave balance cash outs.
So they're not being forced to make contributions while they're in.
No one's being forced.
Well, if you fall in with
unanimously-
this group, you'd have to be forced.
But they've made their own choice, and it's a unanimous group vote in those groups. If there's one in any of those groups that you don't see them because they didn't make the chart.
So you hire somebody tomorrow, and they'll fall within one of these categories?
If
or are
they
not gonna
do,
be in that
if they
category?
do, they would be required to contribute accordingly.
And according to this, I mean, one of them
Yes.
does sick leave, one of them doesn't do it, one does vacation, another doesn't do it.
That's correct.
How do you ever change that? Is it the city council then that can change the plan? Can it ever be changed?
It can be changed, how the resolution is set up, because it doesn't involve city funding. It would be changed administratively through my office, my title, in working with the administrator, ICMARC, as well as the HR staff.
So once the city council adopts this, the city council's out of it. Any changes made in the future will be made at the city manager
Yes.
level?
We're not anticipating a lot of changes.
I guess it's just bothering me, this mandatory and the carving out,
If you break down, and I won't go into the
and I'm going to use, well, let me use you as an example. There's a city manager one. So when we go to negotiate the contract with the new city manager, that city manager is going to have to agree. to
No,
what-
I'm a bad example in just this respect, not in other respects. But I'm a bad
Kind of
example
night,
because
particularly when I'm talking about the next city manager.
typically this program is really, typically it's adopted by the city manager position in a respective city only. Because the manager by IRS rules is its own group and can only be its own group. No one else can be in it. So it's easy to pick a program that works for one person and get it, it's obvious it's a unanimous vote. When you go further into the organization and you want to achieve the unanimous vote, you can have as little as 2/3, but we chose unanimous because we didn't want to bring anybody along unwillingly. It gets a little, it gets a little more onerous when you have to, it's more cumbersome to try and get a unanimous vote. So if when you someday negotiate with a new city manager, that's an easy one. You wouldn't have to, they can just name what they want to do. They can do nothing because it's just one person.
So each group can change what that group does.
We would ask for it to continue to be a unanimous decision in terms of change.
But within each group.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if Group 23 decides it wants something different, they can make that.
Unanimously, yes. And I'm hopeful because when we consider outside employment in terms of a recruitment tool, I look at this as a real benefit for another item that we can recruit with. This is a positive item. And when you look at the actual loss of control on leave cash out or salary, the only item out of all the groups really that they don't have control over is when they separate and the leave balance that they may be entitled to cash out, because you can't really manipulate that amount unless you want to call in sick and have a day off. You can gain it that way by having a day off. But otherwise, you cannot manipulate, and I don't mean that in a negative way. The employee doesn't have control over that the leave cash out when they separate.
But
the other items they can, because they could use the vacation and they can draw the balance down so it doesn't go into the fund.
Oh, I see what you're, instead of having to do it, but what they have at the time of separation, they couldn't cash it out for money. They
Right.
has to go into the
That's right.
plan.
Whereas the other leaves, you can cash out and it won't go into the plan because you draw it to a zero balance before you separate. So that's really the only category that really ties the employees. It's the sick leave cash out because they can't take it unless they go through the program, if their program has defined that.
And the percentage of employees that will be covered by this?
I think it's roughly 80%. It's over 100, I think,
Well, there's 100 employees
involved.
that are involved, there's 85 that will be active as of July 1, and 15 others that will roll into one of those groups eventually. So that's 100 employees, and then 46 employees that have not formed a group.
So 100 out of 146.
So then my last question, so an employee who today is in one group, who perhaps that group didn't participate.
Right.
But because of time or whatever, now gets into another group.
That is correct. They will graduate into that group where it might apply to them.
And was that discussed with our?
That was discussed with the employees. They're
And
aware
what
of
did they
that.
have to say about that?
They didn't get a chance to vote in the group that they would graduate to. I can tell you with the executives, I didn't participate in the detailed discussion. Our executive group is a group, and we considered that. The 2 employees in the executive group that will graduate into the plan that are not, because of age, they're not in it yet, they're okay with that. We talked it through.
But how about the employees and, you know,
I don't know
That
if that, how
conversation.
deep of a conversation that went with the other employees. I imagine we followed the same process. I have heard zero complaints from
do they even
anyone.
know it? Do they realize
Yes,
that they're
they
going to end
do.
up in that plan, whether they?
Yes. Whether they like it or not, I don't know, but they do know.
It was explained. Bruce had several meetings with the employees here, and I went out to the courtyard and talked to Streets and Water, and it was made very clear to them. And the sanitary group also had it clarified, so they were fully informed, so they are aware of it.
But they didn't want it today, but they're willing to take it because maybe it's more money and they can afford it?
Yeah, typically, the lower that, you need more cash when you're younger. And typically, when you get, as you get older, you move, yeah, you can contribute more. And Kathy brings up a good point. We did get the administrator here, the expert, and we met with all the employees. We've tried to make this, we spent a lot of time, we tried to make this as conclusive as possible.
Okay, well, the main thing is they're aware that it may come, whether they wanted it today, that will
It could
be
come down the
mandated
road.
to them.
But again, if you look at what is actually being adopted, they have almost complete control over what they actually have to contribute in the benefit cash-out area, not in the salary
Or we're
area.
forcing them to either use it,
Well,
or it gets contributed.
we wouldn't force anybody to use, they would still have the option without this plan to cash out everything except the sick leave, to avoid going into the medical account.
Okay, so everything except that could be cashed?
Yeah, and if they wanted to use their sick time and
Okay.
yeah, that type of thing, and be paid for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Move to establish an employee-paid retirement health savings program with Vantage Care.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
All right.
That passes 5-0. Okay, that gets us down to, we already said the closed session. Ms. City Manager, anything tonight?
Did we do the city? We did
I'm
the city
sorry,
clerk
we
op-
got one other thing. General Services is the 50th anniversary request for Studio Channel Islands Art Center for the Mayor's Choice Award artwork. Let's see, I believe there's a request from, well, do we have a staff report? Let's do that.
We do, Your
Yeah,
Honor.
thank you, Richard.
It's late.
I'll try and be brief, and please forgive me, my voice, apparently I'm losing it tonight for some reason. But as you know, on May 14th, you asked staff to go back to Studio Channel Islands and to see if there was a way we could purchase the artwork rather than provide a monetary prize award. Staff did make contact with Studio Channel Islands. I did talk to them there. Since each artist is an individual and submits individually and certainly puts their own worth to their art, they were unable to commit to that. They did say to me that certainly some piece of art could be purchased in the range of $300 to $500, but it would depend on the selection of art that you chose and what that individual artist was willing to sell it for. So we would have to negotiate with that individual once that art was selected. And also they pointed out the fact that while we could negotiate to use the image for the purposes that we had stated previously, as in budget binders or in anniversary brochures, et cetera, that we would not have a copyright to that art, even though we purchased that art. With that in mind, the question is, do you want staff then to negotiate with the artist on a piece of art, for instance, that you chose or that council will choose at this point in time, not to exceed the $500 direction that you gave us?
I have, let me, just a little bit of comment, a little bit of maybe some updated information. I believe it was last I went, when was it, Bill? We were there
Saturday
Saturday
afternoon,
afternoon,
yeah.
and I believe it was Friday morning I selected a piece, and Mr. Little was there as well. We met the artist that did paint that. My understanding is that she's a Camarillo resident, by the way, and she would be willing to sell it to the city. It's the St. Mary Magdalene Bell Tower, and I know Bill had a conversation with her too, so
I
maybe you
think
might want to.
is she the one that got the?
First place?
First place?
I thought
Yes.
that was of the
Well,
ranch.
that got sold that day, not to us.
Did she sell it?
She sold it right.
We can't buy it now.
How much?
I have no
know.
idea. Whatever, they all had asking prices of around,
This one was, I think, was about $400, I
yeah, I
believe she
think
was
that was
asking
it.
for.
There was a lot of nice art there, I'll tell you that, and there was there's a number of other nice pieces there that if we wanted a picture, painting, I'm sure we could pick one, but it's all going to be in the area of,
They were-
$300, $400, $500.
Yeah, that was the window.
Are they on display?
Confused.
Yes.
They are at this
They are.
Blackboard
We can go in the
Gallery,
Blackboard Gallery and
and
see
I
'em?
would,
They
I
are.
would urge anyone who
we
would
can look
like
at
to
'em.
see images of our landmarks
Yeah, that'd be-
to go and look at them, because they did some very nice work. You can, for the most part, you could tell what they are.
Charlotte had a question. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Sometimes
Well,
you
just
can't.
to remind everybody of the history of this, the Channel Islands Art Group came, or they didn't come, they met with staff, but they asked the 50th Anniversary Committee if we would provide a $500 prize to the winner of this art judging. And we said, we don't have that authority, and we want you to ask the city council. So it came to the city council, and we said, no, we didn't think we wanted to start providing first-place prizes for contests in town, so somebody threw out maybe we could buy it, or buy the rights to use it on our budget and other covers. And so I think if the winning one has already been purchased, maybe we ought to stop and think, are we just going to go out and start buying art? And if so, we need a criteria. So I'm not sure I'm in favor of this particular thing.
Your Honor.
Yeah.
Just if I could, they did give out prizes. Now, who provided that money, I don't know, but they gave out 3 prizes for the first, second, and third. And the first prize was $500, and the second was, I think, $300, and one was $400.
I was just giving the history of how this
Yeah, and
request
just-
came about.
So they've taken care of that, and then in addition, like I said, the first prize, or the first place winner, got her picture sold that very day, so.
You're pretty sure of that, Bill? You know
Yes,
that? Okay.
because it was announced then, right then and there.
All right.
So I think I kind of agree with Charlotte. I think we're talking about something that's already come and gone.
Yeah.
I suggest we,
And if we're going to start buying art, I think we need criteria and somebody to sit down and decide it, not just deciding up here, yeah, let's run out and buy some art.
Yeah, this was just for the 50th anniversary, so.
I just
For
can go look at it.
clarification, I thought, reading in the paper, I wasn't there, that it was a picture of the ranch house. No, and you say it was St. Mary
The
Magdalene?
St. Mary Magdalene's bell tower that I actually selected.
Oh,
Yeah, the
Maybe
mayor
some-
had to do the picking.
maybe it's some, oh,
And then we were supposed to pay the $500 prize.
maybe Kevin paid it.
I wish. It's a beautiful.
You bought it!
It was beautiful. I probably should have. I didn't realize. I was hoping the city would buy it, but I guess we're not, so,
Oh, well, that's
yeah.
done.
$400 in the hand
She was a
worth
local
the
artist,
promise.
too, lives in Camarillo, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
huh.
yeah.
I think,
Well, it
Your
sounds
Honor,
Yes, Mr.
given the circumstances, I think I'd just suggest that we table this matter and,
Yeah, looks
I'll
like
second
there's nothing
that.
really to decide then. Okay.
Thank you very
Consider
much.
it done.
thank you. You wanted to,
There's a lot of nice art. Well, I would encourage all, but listening and the council members, if they go over there and see, there's a lot of really good artwork about Camarillo, which is there. So if you have a few moments, it's in what are what do they call that? The gallery, but it's.
Blackboard galleries.
Blackboard Gallery. Yeah, so if you have an opportunity, go on over there and see it. It just takes a few minutes.
I have a house guest from Australia who arrived about 5 tonight, and if we get out of here before any time after noon tomorrow, or before noon tomorrow, I'm going to take her down.
You might be able to do it. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so that, I believe, that does get us now down to Mr. City Manager. Anything tonight?
I had two quick ones. I'm going to give one. Tom is going to comment on the Leisure Village Fitness Center in terms of our plan check process, and I also wanted to note that the city entry monument and fence at Lewis and Pleasant Valley, starting there, if you haven't had a chance to go out and see it, it's just amazing. And that is, majority is federally funded too. So
really good.
we got a great deal, and it came out right, and it just looks really amazing.
So is it done?
Did a good
It's
job
pretty
on
darn
that.
close. It's really
Bruce,
beautiful.
I got a comment from somebody that drives that thing and said, that is really nice. Are they going to put one across on the other side of the street too? I said, wait.
Yeah, well, there's a development on that side. We're working on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Fox, did you have something that you wanted to talk about tonight? Did I hear that right?
Yes, Your Honor. There's been some comments or questions about the city's involvement in a process that the Leisure Village is going through with FEMA on trying to get a fitness center built and approved.
A fitness center?
Yeah, a fitness center building built that would expand the facilities that they have out in the village. It's in the floodplain, and so there's some complications with that. So I just wanted to I know I've been getting a couple questions from council, so I just thought I'd kind of set the record straight as to what that's all about. And it is a complicated issue for, a community who doesn't deal with permitting and FEMA to really understand the roles of the city and the federal government and so on. So just to clarify that, when Leisure Village wants to build or any development wants to build an addition in the city, they do go through Public Works to get a grading permit. So that is a permitting process they are dealing with the city on. However, because what's unique in this case, they're in a flood zone, they have to work with FEMA, and they don't, the city's not involved with that directly as far as any kind of approval or decision making. They have to deal with the federal government, FEMA, in order to get the approval on how to build that within the flood zone. So there's these two parallel permitting requirements going on that probably is confused, and that's why some of the comments came out in the paper, confused as to why the city hasn't approved their FEMA side of it. So I'll explain a little bit of what's going on with each of those as far as schedule. The way that we work with any development on a grading permit is they bring in sets of plans that we review. If they're set to go, we approve them. If there's issues, we comment and send them back. And usually there's about 3 rounds of comments. So the first plan check for that grading was submitted to Public Works at the end of January. And right away, we got our comments back to them at the beginning of February. So they had an understanding of what some of the changes were in the grading plan that they would need to make to get an approved permit from the city. That kind of effort got suspended. We haven't received any of their revised plans back since then because I think they've been focusing on the FEMA problem and have just suspended the plan check process for the plan. So the city's not holding anything up there. We commented, got our comments back right away, and now they're sitting in their shop. It's their move to make the changes and get it back. Now, as far as the FEMA issue, because it's a FEMA requirement that when they submit the paperwork to FEMA to get their approval, there's a box that has to be checked by the city to acknowledge that we're aware that they're proposing to build a building in the flood zone. All we're required to do is check the box. There's no analysis, there's no decision making that goes along with that. FEMA just needs to know that the city's been made aware. That's all the more we're required to do. However, because we've had some experience at the staff level dealing with FEMA, we were willing to be helpful and met with the architect and engineer that's working on the project for Leisure Village to help advise them and give them some ideas on what they can do to, have a better chance of getting their project approved with FEMA. It was completely to be helpful. We have no authority, and I think that was something they maybe were confused a little bit by and thought that we were ultimately going to somehow approve the project for them or somehow make FEMA approve the project for them. We have no authority over FEMA. So all we've done is my staff has spent a lot of time with phone calls, emails, meetings with their design team to try and help them any way we can. But in the end, we have no control over the outcome. Now, where the project currently sits is we think they've finally reached the point where they have a final submittal that they've made to FEMA to get there's a two-step permit process to get the first part of the permit, and that's called a CLOMAR. It's a conditional map of, let's see, CLOMAR, conditional letter of map revision. And that is to allow them to start the grading. FEMA hasn't approved it, but we're hopeful that it's the final submittal that FEMA will approve. And once they receive that, and of course get their plans back into us to get their grading permit, then they can start grading. Unfortunately, and this is where they may become frustrated and there may be some more bad news, is the next step is to get the second part of the FEMA permit, and that's called a LOMAR, a letter of map revision. That's where they get the final approval to start building the structure. And that can take quite a while. As an example, we've had, that's when the Cayugas Creek was widened out in the village of the park. That was completed, a year ago now, and they're still months away from getting their LOMAR, so it could be quite a while before they get.
What was that again over there?
The Cayugas Creek that I'm referring to, the widening of Cayugas Creek by Pleasant Valley Road. That was a project not related to Leisure Village, but I'm just using it as an example of that's been completed for a while, and they still haven't received their approval from FEMA for removing the homes in the area from the flood zone. So that takes it's quite a process with FEMA. And we've even talked to several of the FEMA staff trying to see if there's anything they can do to expedite, and they're pretty clear that they don't expedite.
It's money. Sounds like the old Corps of Engineers.
Yeah. So anyhow, I just want to emphasize to the council, we've done everything we can to try and be helpful, but we don't have any authority to direct an outcome on the FEMA issue. And unfortunately, I'm guessing this will go on for a while.
Okay, great. Anything else, Bruce, with you
No,
tonight?
that's it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. City Attorney, anything tonight?
I have no items.
Okay, City Council, let's start with Mr. Morgan. Anything tonight?
Yeah, a few things since our last meeting. I had 2 Boy Scout awards I went to. One was at the library and one was at the Christian church, which a lot of people were at that one. That was amazing. Camarillo Ranch Foundation meeting, Bill and I went to that. Now I can actually be out there when we hand food because I went to the food handling class by Environmental Health and got my certificate. So both 2 of us, myself and Mike Buchanan, will be out there at the event in case they need a food handler, person with certificate for our 50th anniversary. Ribbon cutting, went to Eyeglass. If you don't know about the Eyeglass factory, over here in front of Home Depot, they actually will make your glasses in one day. It's amazing. And some other things that they can do there. Now we got something here that people will come to get their stuff done. So that was kind of a fun thing. We had a budget session. I won't go into that on last Saturday. And lastly, I went to the Air Quality Control Board for our budget. It lasted a little while. It's not normally an hour meeting like normal. It's like 2 hours meeting. But we did get to the budget, and Mike Villegas does a fantastic budget. And he also is recommending to the board that we build this building out here, what you call it, Selleck's property. He's got to give him a final number, but he thinks it'll be within their range of $5 to $5.5 million. So it looks like we may have another government agency moving here besides VCTC and others. So we're becoming central to the county. Anyway, that's it, Your Honor.
Mr. Little, anything tonight?
Well, most of my meetings have already been covered by Mr. Morgan. We did have a citizens appointment committee, Councilmember Craven and I, and you know the results of that. This past Monday, I attended the Streets and Transportation Committee. The Camarillo Ranch Board, we talked about the art exhibit I was at on Saturday. I do have one question, if I could, and that is, there's a number of political signs left over from this last campaign that is on private property. but they're out in the, they're not in public property as well as I could tell. What is the city's position on that? Do we go out and ask these people to take them in, or and there's several candidates, not just one candidate?
Right, yes. There's a time limit upon which people can leave political signs up, and I'll contact the code compliance manager and make sure they do a sweep.
Okay.
Just travel around.
I got one address I can give you right now.
Crestview has 3 of one person.
Whatever information you can provide if you have an area of significance.
Crestview has 3.
Crestview?
Down that street all the way to Spanish Hills. They're still up as of yesterday.
Okay.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
Mrs. Craven?
Well, I attended a citizen appointment committee, and that was on tonight's agenda. I also attended an economic development committee meeting and an RDP 21 meeting. I want to say that driving around town, I think the medians and everything look great. The jacaranda, I know Mr. Morgan doesn't like them, but Mrs. McDonald doesn't like the magnolia trees, but I just love it when the jacarandas are blooming. I think it looks great out there. Just thinking we have a really beautiful city, and every time I look at the medians and remember what it used to look like, I have to think of Sandy Bush and Tad Bowen. It was Tad's idea when he first got elected in, 1982, to do a landscape master plan. And Mike and the rest of them who were there then did a good job of doing that. That was approved on my first council meeting, actually. Tad wasn't on the council anymore. That and the bike path. Yeah, that long book we approved. Yeah. Anyway, I just want to say I think it looks really nice right now. And I know this was a discussion earlier, but I had it written down here, and after reading through everything that was given to us at, I think it was the last council meeting, I think we need to take another look at, I don't know if it's the ordinance, I should have pulled it, I've just not had time this week to read our rent review, the ordinance that put our rent review commission into place. I don't know if it's the way if it's in the wording of the ordinance, if it's in the way we enacted it or what, but if there are other cities that have found a way to make it so that a number of tenants can complain about rent increases, and it doesn't have to be within a 30-day period to get enough of them. We have two things that I think makes it very easy for landlords to get around our ordinance. One is that they have to be within a 30-day period, and the second is you have to get a certain percentage, and they are finding ways to bypass, to make it so that it just isn't possible. And in reading that last week, when I had more time, I just thought, fair's fair, and if we're going to have something that doesn't work, we need to look at ways to make it work.
We have that on the master tracking list, and we're
Okay.
working on it, so I appreciate your comments.
Good.
Yep.
That's all.
Can I make a comment on that? Yeah, my observation is our council's fastly becoming a meeting place for homeowners associations. So either, if you want to keep doing that, we certainly can, but if we could definitely follow up on what Mrs. Craven has said, so maybe some of the work can be done in its rightful place, and that's their own homeowners association. So maybe if we could do that, that might be beneficial. Yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Kevin, we got one person, this one, that just wants to attack us, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay, Mrs. McDonald, anything?
Thank you. I agree. I love this time of year when the city turns purple.
Yes.
It looks so pretty.
But the magnolias are out too now.
Well, yeah, but there's one little tiny yellow, white flower. Constitution Park looks gorgeous with all its jacarandas out there. I am glad to hear that Mr. Fox is not picking on seniors, as the letter to the paper today. Seems to be the day everybody wants to pick on us, so I'm glad to hear you're doing everything you can to help them. And hopefully the word gets out that it is the federal government and not the city of Camarillo. Meeting-wise, off of our list, I've been to the legislative committee. I think you saw that in this agenda item, Economic Development Committee and VCTC since our last meeting. I do have one question as far as the city looking beautiful. The parts of Springville that are no longer being farmed, but not being built on yet, are now becoming a weed patch. How long is it going to stay there? Do they have the right to let it become that? Does it need to be cleared? Can you kind of look into that and see what we need to do to make that look a little better?
Yep.
And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see, just quickly, meetings attended, small business seminar at CSUCI Wednesday, June 4th. And then I attended the Camarillo Council at PTA's Service Award later that night. VRSD meeting on Thursday. I was with Mr. Little on Saturday afternoon at the down on the boulevard there with the art. 6:30 that night, I was the Filipino American Association. I installed their officers. Attended a Street and Transportation Committee meeting on Monday. And today's the council meeting. So one other thing, quickly, my recollection, a number of months ago, Mrs. McDonald brought up about the taxis in town, and I wasn't sure if we've had any updated information on where we are with that.
We don't, and I don't think that's on our follow-up master. It is? Oh, okay. So we'll get you an update on that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for
And another
reminding.
thing, maybe if the streets could look at the queue on the intersection on Ventura Boulevard going into Highway 101 at rush hour, especially around between 7:38, it's backing up quite a bit past the Elements Coffee there, and then it opens up and everybody kind of is able to go through, but it's a queue coordinated to the best of the ability, because we are getting, it's becoming more and more
Going southbound.
popular as a destination to get in. And
Southbound.
It's running okay, but I've just noticed that the queuing seems to be backing up quite a bit. So, again, it's a traffic thing, and, you know, it is what it is. I believe it's a Caltrans, as I understand it. Yeah. Okay. And that's all I have. So I think we've got a closed session item?
We've got to finish the study session.
Finish the study
and then
session.
and we can stay right there and do our closed
Okay.
session.
All right. So with that. And we've already announced, I believe, the closed session, so.